Protecting unborn babies. Pro-life lawmakers propose a new bill to prevent federal funding of abortion. Trip to the Vatican. What U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Pope Francis discussed today. Holy Mass. Catholics pray for the victims of the Florida building collapse. And papal trip anniversary. Take a look back at the Holy Father's journey to Armenia. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, June 28th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. U.S. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and several other House Republicans are trying to get H.R. 18 passed. It is a pro-life measure that would make the long-standing Hyde Amendment permanent. And that's not all. The Hyde Amendment prohibits the use of federal Medicaid dollars for abortions. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales explains the unusual way lawmakers are trying to get it done.
This is really a grassroots effort. Every single day, pro-life lawmakers are asking for unanimous consent to bring H.R. 18 to the House floor for a vote.
By putting Hyde on the chopping block, the message they are sending is clear and chilling. That the radical demands of the socialist left drowned out common sense, science, and the views of most Americans.
Protecting life is not and should not be a partisan issue. The president and congressional Democrats need to listen to the American people who overwhelmingly support life.
The Republicans are totally united in trying to defend the sanctity of unborn babies from the violence of abortion.
New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith is the author of H.R. 18, titled No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion and Abortion Insurance. It currently has 183 co-sponsors.
You know, after 62.5 million abortions, which equates with the entire population of Italy, it is time to stop, at least make sure that we do not fund abortion on demand. And that's exactly what H.R. 18, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, would do.
In addition to making the Hyde Amendment permanent, H.R. 18 would also ensure the Affordable Care Act conforms with the Hyde Amendment, codify the Smith Amendment, which prohibits federal employee health care plans from funding abortion, and prohibits federal funding of abortion and several other federal programs throughout government agencies.
I hope Speaker Pelosi brings it to the floor. She is blocking it, but all we need is 5 Democrats to stand up. 5 Democrats standing up and saying, I'm willing to protect life and codify the Hyde Amendment, and it could become law.
Minority Whip Steve Scalise says polling shows majority of Americans oppose taxpayer-funded abortions, nearly 6 in 10, according to a Marist poll released earlier this year. The U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops' Secretariat of Pro-Life Activities says Congress must act now to protect babies and mothers. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the Biden administration's top diplomat meets one-on-one with Pope Francis. The meeting comes as President Joe Biden has come under intense scrutiny for his stance on abortion and whether he should present himself for Holy Communion. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, today during a closed-door meeting at the Apostolic Palace, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with the Pope for about 40 minutes. And Secretary Blinken was asked whether he and the Holy Father discussed what everyone's been talking about, whether President Biden should receive Holy Communion.
Pope Francis says hello to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. A Vatican spokesman says their meeting, quote, played out in a cordial atmosphere. Secretary Blinken later shared pictures of his meeting with the Holy Father. He called it an honor and praised the Pope's, quote, commitment to tackling the climate crisis and promoting human rights and human dignity around the world. Also discussed at the Vatican, China. Last year, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called on the Holy See to take a tougher stand against Chinese restrictions on religious freedom. President Biden, for his part, has criticized China for forced labor practices. But asked whether the two discussed President Joe Biden's worthiness to receive the Eucharist, Secretary Blinken skirted the controversy, saying, quote, one of the luxuries of my job is that I don't do domestic politics. Secretary Blinken is also responding to U.S. military airstrikes against Iranian-backed militia groups near the border between Iraq and Syria. The secretary says President Joe Biden ordered the strikes to prevent attacks against U.S. troops.
We have been very clear, the president has been very clear throughout that we will act to protect U.S. personnel.
Also today here at the White House, President Biden greeted the outgoing Israeli president. Reuven Rivlin traveled to the U.S. as part of a farewell visit. Now, by the way, the White House says the timing of that airstrike had nothing to do with the Israeli president's trip here to the White House. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A bipartisan deal to spend nearly $1 trillion in the nation's infrastructure appears to be back on track. The bill is alive again following a reversal by President Joe Biden. Last week, he said he supported the agreement and then later said he would only support the measure if it were coupled with a larger Democrat-backed plan on taxes. Following the reversal, some Republicans believe the measure has enough votes to pass the Senate. Joining us now is Dennis Ross, former Republican Congressman from Florida and director of the American Center for Political Leadership at Southeastern University. Representative Ross, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. First off, I'd like to get your thoughts on the infrastructure bill, and also, what do you make of President Biden's walk back?
Well, I think the infrastructure bill, look, we've needed infrastructure investment for quite some time, well before the 2008 recession. In fact, that's what that whole package, the bailout then was for, but it never happened for shovel-ready projects. We have a terrible infrastructure, whether it be roads, bridges, sewer systems, grids, everything, broadband. We need help. We don't have dollars. So I'm not surprised that we came to a bipartisan deal. About $500 billion of it is for actual infrastructure. The other, it's in order to grease the wheels to get the package passed on both sides of the aisle. So, you know, we need to get something done. How we're going to pay for it is going to be the interesting thing. President Biden walking back, it doesn't surprise me. You know, look, he's had 6 months of momentum in the majority, and he's realized that he can't get things done that he promised he was going to do, nor will he be able to get done what his left wing wants him to get to do, but he's got to produce something. And I think the Republicans holding his feet to the fire and saying we're not going to go along with anything unless you take into consideration our concerns is starting to pay off, at least in a little bit. It's still going to be an expensive package, but again, it's something that we really have to address.
Yeah, I want to switch gears here just a little bit. Former President Donald Trump, he held a rally over the weekend. Do you know what the purpose of that was? What do we know about the turnout there? And also, what do you think of this strategy for Republicans going into the 2022 midterms?
Well, I can tell you from personal experience, because I spoke at 5 rallies for then candidate Trump in 2016. This is a person who enjoys, in fact, really gets excited about getting other people excited about America and being involved in the political process. I think he's ready to get back on the trail. Whether he comes back as wanting to be the king or the kingmaker, I don't know yet. But I know that he's focusing on those that voted against him in the impeachment, the 10 Republicans who did so. He wants to be able to see what kind of value he still has with the American public and especially his base. You'll see him do rallies. I think he's got one scheduled in Sarasota down here in Florida for the July 3rd, I think. I think he's got another one in between there. He'll start picking these up and see how things go. You know, this is a man who was looking at all his options. People said, well, maybe he'll run for the House and be Speaker of the House. He doesn't need to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. You know, if the Republicans take the majority in 2022 and he is popular enough for them that there's a possibility they could elect him as Speaker of the House without ever being a member of the House. So he still is in a kingmaker role right now. If not, he decide to become president in 2024. I think that's a difficult road for him at this point, but he still has a great deal of influence. As you know, from the Republican minority in the House right now continues to work with him and try to build a base in order to get the majority in 2022.
Well, something else I want to talk about, we only have about a minute left or so. It also happened over the weekend, was mentioned earlier. The U.S. launched what the Pentagon has called defensive airstrikes against Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq. Quickly, can you talk more about that and also the timing of it?
Yeah, I can tell you, the Iranians, through their proxies, through Hezbollah, have been attacking through drones and otherwise American forces in Iraq. I was over there. I led a congressional delegation there in 2018. We saw this happening. At that point, we were able to empower the Iraqi military and people to fight this, and we were successful. The timing of this is really interesting because Iran is now coming to the table wanting to have continued lessening of the restrictions, economic sanctions against them, and wanting to reaffirm the nuclear deal that they entered into with President Obama. These are to show some force, show of force that they mean business. And I'm glad to see President Biden at least fought back to protect American troops, especially on the Iraqi-Syrian border, where it is a very hotbed of problems. I'm hopeful, but we've got to be a little bit more. We don't need to send troops over there. We don't need to be doing that. We saw that from the last time we got rid of ISIS, we can empower the Iraqi people, the Iraqi military, to do what's necessary to protect themselves. But this is a good first step to have these strikes to show that we are not going to tolerate them attacking us.
No, Representative Ross, great talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Representative Dennis Ross, former congressman from Florida and director of the American Center for Political Leadership at Southeastern University. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, the Archbishop of St. Paul, Minneapolis, has prayed for peace and racial reconciliation after last Friday's sentencing of former police officer Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd. Chauvin received more than 20 years in prison for the murder and manslaughter conviction. Archbishop Bernard Hebda asked for deeper conversations on race relations. He also prayed for the Floyd family's consolation and for community healing. A block next to the collapsed condominium in Surfside, Florida, parishioners of St. Joseph's Parish prayed yesterday for victims and for loved ones.
The only thing left for us to do is to have faith in God, that He will carry all of us through, these poor families and the anxiety, to wait and see for their loved ones.
Father Juan Sosa says 10 people from his parish remain among the many who are still missing. A married couple survived the collapse, but remembered their next-door neighbor who died. At the Vatican, Pope Francis also offered prayers. Protests against Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas escalated in Bethlehem yesterday. Demonstrations marked the death of an outspoken critic of the Palestinian Authority who was arrested last week by security forces. Last April's cancellation of elections by Abbas has also fueled discontent. Italy is welcoming a return to mask-free life with today's end of the government-imposed requirement. Face masks became mandatory last year due to a second wave of coronavirus. Some remain cautious and say they will still put on a mask if necessary. Coronavirus infections remain high in Malaysia, where a near total lockdown will continue indefinitely. Malaysia had halted economic and social activity this month after infections spiked to more than 9,000 per day. That rate has decreased by a third, but Malaysia's population remains vulnerable, with only a small fraction fully vaccinated. An editorial writer of the now-defunct Hong Kong pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily was arrested last night while attempting to leave the city. Local media says Feng Wei-kong was arrested on suspicion of foreign collusion to endanger national security. Apple Daily founded by Catholic Jimmy Lai printed its final edition last week. Coming up, protecting religious freedom, the trouble facing Christians in Nigeria, and opinion poll, how American Catholics view Pope Francis. A group defending Christians around the world is warning of the situation for the faithful in Nigeria. Aid to the church in need says since the beginning of the year, more than 100 Christians have been killed in Nigeria's Middle Belt. Violence there also has forced a huge number of families to flee for safety. The country's bishops' conference has referred to it as, quote, the killing fields. Joining us now is Edward Clancy, Director of Outreach for Aid to the Church in Need here in the United States. Edward, welcome back. Good to be with you again. Tell us briefly about Life for Christians in Nigeria. Who's behind this violence, and has that violence escalated in recent months?
Well, the Life for Christians is difficult because it's not in one location. Previously, it seemed to be isolated to the Northeast, but now it's the Middle Belt, it's in the South, it's in the Northwest. And the Christian population is being decimated in a lot of areas. And if they're not being decimated, they're being so isolated that they don't really have much life.
Can you talk about, what your organization is doing to help the situation there?
Well, we have been helping, especially in the Borno state up in the Northeast, with especially women recovering their lives after brutality by Boko Haram. And there's a center up there for rehabilitation, and we've assisted there. And we've also worked with the bishops wherever they've needed it, including keeping the seminaries open, even though they've become a great target. And unfortunately, the seminary in Kaduna had to close because of violence, and 274 young men are now being not given the opportunity to continue their vocation. We hope that would change soon.
Is there any indication, that things will improve for the faithful there? And what can, in your opinion, what should be done to help?
Well, there are a few things that have changed recently. The leader of Boko Haram was killed, and there's a change of leadership. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is a change. The UN has also announced that they will help in combating terrorism. One of the problems in Nigeria is the northern borders are very porous, and so terrorists can go in and out without much problems, and it's very hard to control between states. And hopefully, if the UN does do something, it will have an impact and allow Nigeria to control better the middle part of the country.
Last week, you and I spoke about the situation for Christians in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Quickly, do you have any updates from there following the election last week?
Well, we've had some good news today. We have the ceasefire by the government against the Tigrayans, which means that there's a good chance that the farmers of the region can plant their crops because they are on the precipice of a famine that could kill or endanger 3.5 million people. And so hopefully this will allow the farmers to plant and to sow and reap and be able to feed themselves. That's one good thing. And the other thing is that even though the election was held across the country, the 3 regions that didn't have it, including Tigray, will have their opportunity in September, and maybe that will be another reason for the ceasefire to continue beyond September.
And Edward, before I let you go, if people would like to help, I know a lot of people want to, how can they do so, and where can they get that information?
Sure, visit our website, churchinneed.org. We try to keep people up to date on all of the situations around the world, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and other places. Unfortunately, there's a great need for information, for prayer, and for assistance.
Well, Edward, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there, but thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for what you do, too. Edward Clancy, Director of Outreach for Aid to the Church in Need here in the United States. Thank you again, and God bless.
You're very welcome. God bless you, too.
Up next, the Catholic community in Armenia. A look back at the Holy Father's historic trip to the country. And Christ's love for us. Pope Francis shares a message of hope. The Pew Research Center is reporting that 82% of Catholic Americans hold a favorable view of Pope Francis. The results of a 13-month online survey additionally indicate that 63% have a very favorable or mostly favorable opinion of the Holy Father. And for further breakdown and analysis from the Pew Survey's results, visit our partners on CatholicNewsAgency.com. 5 years ago this month, Pope Francis visited Armenia. Pope Francis visited Armenia for 3 days and met members of the Catholic community and the Armenian Apostolic Church. The Holy Father also referred to the killings of Armenians by Ottoman Turks roughly a century earlier as a, quote, genocide. Armenia has roughly 3 million people and is located in the region between Asia and Europe. Joining us now from Rome is Garen Nazarian, Armenian Ambassador to the Holy See. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate it. Tell us, what were the most memorable parts of the Holy Father's trip, and why was the trip arranged in the first place?
Well, thank you very much for having me in your program. It was an immense honor for all of us to welcome the Roman Pontiff on the Armenian soil, which withstood sufferings through millennia for a Christian identity and values. 5 years ago, His Holiness visited us at the invitation of the President of Armenia and the heads of the Armenian Apostolic and Catholic churches. There are many moving moments of the visit that are vivid in our minds and hearts. First of all, the motto of the apostolic journey to Armenia in 2016 was the visit to the first Christian nation. Approving this official motto and characterizing the trip as a pilgrimage, His Holiness time and again has demonstrated the care towards Armenian people. It equally attests to the unique bonds that happily exist between the Armenian Apostolic and Roman Catholic churches. I remember at the airport, Pope Francis was greeted by the small Singers of Armenia choir, which performed medieval Armenian carols. Children presented to His Holiness with the Armenian apricots and the Armenian bread lavash, which was later on included in the UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. At the Armenian Genocide Memorial, Pope Francis paid a tribute to the memory of 1.5 million Armenians, the victims of the genocide of 1915. His Holiness laid a wreath at the memorial and also made inscription in the book of honorary guests by asserting that, and I quote, the memory is the source of peace and the future, unquote.
Well, you talked about the impact of Pope Francis's trip to Armenia. I'm wondering, was he one of the first world leaders to actually refer to the Armenian genocide?
Let me say that, well, I would point out that Pope Francis enjoys great respect and admiration of the Armenian people worldwide, given also his dedication to humanitarian ideals and the universal values of love, peace, and kindness, and of course, His Holiness' constant care for the matters of concern to the Armenians worldwide. And I refer here to the message of justice that was conveyed to mankind from the Vatican during the Mass celebrated by Pope Francis in April 2015, and also His Holiness' statements in Yerevan during and after the visit, that the first of the mass atrocities having affected the humanity, the Armenian genocide, is a historical fact and an undeniable reality.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it. Garen Nazarian, Armenian Ambassador to the Holy See. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me in the program.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis says Jesus heals our hearts wounded from lack of love.
Gesù ti chiede uno sguardo che non si fermi all'esteriorità, ma vada al cuore.
Yesterday at the Sunday address, the Holy Father pointed out the most serious illness in life is a lack of love and not being able to love. Pope Francis also explained how Jesus does not stop at the wounds and makes mistakes of the past, but goes beyond sins and prejudices to reach the heart. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.